What other line items can we look at? How can we be creative about this and think outside the box? And that's how you're going to find those investments that are different from those that just fall flat.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer, ADP. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in. All right, welcome back, Freedom Point podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. We're so glad you're here with us again today. I've got an amazing guest, as I always do. Annie Dickerson, welcome to the show.
I'm thrilled to be here with you and your listeners, Jeremy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Annie is with Goodegg Investments. She's a real estate investing expert with over 15 years of experience and has garnered acclaim as the Real Estate Investor of the Year by, get this, Motley Fool. All right. Annie's firm, Goodegg Investments, has facilitated over $1.4 billion in commercial real estate investments, impacting countless of investors nationwide. Annie, I know you personally because I've been following you on podcasts. I've been seeing what you guys have been up to over at Goodegg Investments. You know, certainly with those that are in the real estate syndication space, you know, your firm is a household name. So for those that are listening to this podcast episode today that do not know you and do not know of Goodegg Investments, would love it if you could give us a little bit more information on your background, you know, what you're currently focused on today, et cetera.
Absolutely. Well, it's been quite a journey. I got to tell you that. First off, I never intended to be a real estate investor nor an entrepreneur. So neither of those were on my life plan. Let's just put it that way. But what happened was I fell into real estate investing. Shortly after my husband and I got married, this was in our early 20s, we decided to buy a house because that's the thing that you're supposed to do, right? You get married, check. You buy a house. That's the next thing. We were living in Washington, D.C. at the time. And we thought, we'll be so cool. We'll buy a condo or a loft. And thankfully, we had a very practical real estate agent at the time, and he talked us into considering a row home, which in DC and other parts of the Northeast are very common. They're like townhomes, but you can purchase each one separately. And a lot of these row homes have not just one, but 2 units. And he said this magical phrase I had never heard before. He said, you know, if you live in one unit and you rent out the other, first you can get the renter to pay down your mortgage and expenses. And eventually, if you move out of that unit and you rent out both units, you could get that to be cash flow positive. And I never heard those words put together before because my parents never owned a home growing up, and I had never been around entrepreneurs before. So I didn't quite think about cash flow quite like that before. And I thought, what do you mean? We could buy this house and the house could eventually pay us? That's genius. I had never thought of that before. And so we went down this path of being accidental landlords, and we started doing this thing with duplexes. And so we started naming them after letters of the alphabet. So that first one became Alpha, then we got Bravo, then Charlie and Delta. We're here in the Bay Area where we are now. And along the way, I started to build up some interest because in the 10 years after college, I had 9 different jobs trying to fit myself in here and there. And one day it clicked for me. And I said, wait a second, I'm trying to do all this scramble with trying to get the right job. But, you know, if I just invest in enough of these houses, each cash flowing this amount each month, I don't have to work anymore. Why don't I just do that? And so I started down that path and I said, okay, forget my job. I'm just going to try to buy all these different houses. I got so obsessed with it that friends and family started to notice. And they said, oh, well, I want to do that too. Teach me how to do that. And I'd start to teach them all the steps. And then every time the person would say, oh, no. I don't want to do the work. I have this pile of money and I want to put it into real estate. People tell me that's what I should do, but I don't want to do the work. Could you do it for me? And at the time I was like, oh, I don't really know how to do that. I only want to take the risk with my own money. So good luck. But I had enough of these conversations that I realized that I knew all these people with the same problem who all wanted to put their money into real estate but didn't know how and didn't have the time or the interest. And so as I dug further, that's when I discovered syndication or these group investments. And what really got me over the hump, because at the time I wasn't thinking I'm going to start a business and I'm going to do this full time. But what got me riled up about it was I had to really dig at the time. This was like 7, 8 years ago. I really had to dig to discover that these things called syndications existed. And I thought, why isn't everybody talking about this? Why doesn't this exist? Why isn't this synonymous with invest in Wall Street, invest in syndications? Why isn't it on the same plane? When these opportunities can be so much more lucrative and lower risk oftentimes than investing in stocks. And so I thought, okay, this has to be my mission now. I have to go, whether people invest with me or not, I have to go and tell people about this. And one of my jobs, those 9 jobs in 10 years, my first one was actually as a 4th grade teacher. And so it kind of had that full circle moment. Now I wasn't teaching math and reading, but I was teaching people about real estate investing. And that's a big part of Goodegg Investments is we've always been about education first and foremost.
Wow, Annie, you just gave us a master class in your background. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So I just love, how you talked about how you kind of fell into it, right? Through learning about, house hacking to, becoming that, accidental, landlord, and then finding yourself in a position to say, hey, well, is there a way, is there an opportunity, for me to educate, others, about this space? Because you're exactly right. I mean, whether it's, the high school teachers, the college professors, the financial advisors, people that are spending, millions and millions of dollars advertising, Wall Street investments, there's just not a whole lot out there that are advertising alternative investing specifically in, passive type businesses. Certainly, there's people out there educating the public on investing in franchised-owned businesses and actively managing, portfolio of single-family or multifamily type business opportunities, but really nothing on the passive side. So I really appreciate, your take there. I do have to ask the question, however, because you've been in this space a long time, as I have as well. What made you decide to really kind of dial in and focus on, the multifamily side as opposed to the other, dozens of other, asset classes that exist out there?
That's a fantastic question. And I think the answer, if I started a business now, would probably be different than when we started out. This is in 2017, 2018. And the first reason is because most people at some point in their lives have lived in an apartment before. So it's very easy for somebody who has never invested in real estate before to understand the concept of what it means to invest in an apartment building. They say, oh yeah, back when I was in college or back after college, I lived in that apartment and I understand how it works. Every month you pay rent. If you're late on your rent, you have to pay a rent fee. If you need maintenance, you call this person. And they understand the model of how that works. So it's very easy to educate somebody and say, okay, well, instead of you being the tenant, you are now part of the on the landlord side of the equation. You're collecting those rent checks, and part of that rent check goes to pay down the mortgage. Part of it goes to these expenses, insurance and maintenance, and part of it goes to adding this value, which then can create these returns for investors. So for somebody who has never invested in real estate before, it was a very easy landing place, or I guess not a landing place, but an onboarding path for them to get into this world. And so that's really why we started, because when my partner Julie and I got into this, we really did it at the beginning to help other women and moms to get into real estate, because we saw it as an opportunity to help moms, especially at the time our kids were, I think she has 3 kids, I have 2 kids. I think at the time when we started the business, I think they were all really small, like under 6 or something. And so we had all these kids and we were like, oh, we just need more time. And this real estate thing, it could help all moms create more time. And so that's really why we got started, because it was easy to understand and it could get people into the game.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I would agree with you on that wholeheartedly. There's a lot of different things that people can invest into on the alternative side, even outside of real estate, quite frankly. But, within real estate, you've got, self-storage and assisted living, and you've got, even RV parks and marinas. And, there's all kinds of different, areas where people can look to deploy their capital. But, the one thing is sure, and that is, multifamily has been historically a very stable, risk adjusted investment opportunity, for investors, looking to deploy capital, on the passive side. So appreciate your perspective there. I know that Goodegg Investments, manages over $1.4 billion in commercial real estate. What lessons maybe have, you and maybe even Julie learned about, managing large scale investments and specifically, maintaining that investor trust?
Such a great question. Well, the first thing is stay in your lane. That's something that we've learned. Is one, to know your lane, know what you're an expert at, and know what you're not an expert at, and to delegate accordingly, to find really excellent partners, and to really work together, because this is a team sport. And on every one of the properties that we manage, we have a team. It's not Julie and I going there and walking the units and fixing things, and it's a whole team of people behind the scenes. And so we have to have really clear communication with them on an ongoing basis. We have to be really organized. We have to each have our areas of expertise so that when we come together, it's like a council or a committee, and each person brings in their viewpoints and their perspectives, and together, then we come up with the best path forward. And often, especially these days when cash can be tight within these investments, it's about, it's not about never having your back up against the wall and always having the best investments. It's impossible. Even the best investors make investments that don't always do well. But at those times when your back is up against the wall, you want the right people around you who are not going to throw in the towel, but who are going to say, okay, how can we get resourceful at this moment? What else can we try that we haven't tried? What other line items can we look at? How can we be creative about this and think outside the box? And that's how you're going to find those investments that are different from those that just fall flat. And so as far as bringing our investors along for the ride, we find that the best is to face the music at all times. And so we're always keeping our investors in the loop. Sometimes even they're like, wow, this is a lot of information. We say, yeah, but we want you to have all the information. And we try as hard as we can to not just dump the information on them, but to do it in a way that's easy to understand, easy to consume, so that without being in the hours and hours of meetings and phone calls that we're on behind the scenes, but in one small snapshot, they can say, I understand what's happening with this property. And they can ask questions if they want or move on with their busy lives. But we find that even when things aren't going according to plan, it's always best to be transparent as much as possible.
Yeah, so appreciate you kind of sharing that perspective on, building, trust through transparency. And you're exactly right. I mean, real estate is not, experiences headwinds, right? Just like any other types of investments, whether it's Wall Street, Main Street. I always like to say that in real estate, birds fly, fish swim, real estate falls apart, right? It's just generally what happens. It's not saying that it's a bad investment, but it's not, immune to, some of the headwinds and the local economic cycles and so forth. But, to your point, your strategy of staying in your lane, delegating, finding partners that complement, what you're good at, right? And really just understanding that it's a relationship business, it's a team sport, all those things are incredibly powerful. So, what would you say has been maybe one or two of your biggest challenges that you faced, in scaling Goodegg Investments, to being the best real estate syndication company in all of North America?
Mm. Well, when I signed up to be an entrepreneur, I had no idea um, the journey that it would be. Tony Robbins says business is a spiritual game. And I didn't understand it at the time, but now I get it. Now I get it. It is not just about numbers and cents. It's not about spreadsheets, and it's not even about just having Zoom meetings. It's really about growing yourself, and because your business will only grow to the extent that you do. And so this business has pushed me to my limits to find new ways to be for myself and for Julie too, and for our partnership. And so I think that's actually one of the top challenges that we've had, is, when Julie and I partnered up, it was because we were both so complementary, and our skill sets were completely like two puzzle pieces fitting together. We're like, oh, this is amazing. You like that. I like this. You're good at that. I'm good at this. This is perfect. But with that, right, there's different ways of thinking about things, especially as the business scales. And so this was one of the biggest challenges and gifts, because just like in a marriage, when your partner is a great and very intimate mirror to those parts of yourself that maybe are your blind spots, it was the same within our partnership. And there have been friction points where we didn't see eye to eye, and we had to really stick it out and work together to find the best path forward for the business and for our investors. And I'm proud to say that the partnership between the two of us has been one of the things I'm most proud of, it probably my whole life, that we've built together and we've stuck together and we've worked through these challenges together. That's one thing. I would say the other and related is the people that we surround ourselves with in this business. It's not always easy to find the right people, whether it's partners or people on the team or contractors. And so we've learned some really hard lessons about hiring the right people or releasing people if we realize they're not the right people, and releasing them on good terms. And so we've certainly learned some challenges, had some challenges as we've grown the business. But it's wonderful that we've been able to keep a solid foundation within our partnership and done our best to support the people who have come and gone throughout the growth.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Annie. I just love, the ways that you talked about, growing yourself, being a better version of yourself, obviously aligning yourself with other people that have a complementary, or other, skill set to complement your own, and just the power of network and how important that is, in growing and scaling up, any business.
I'm Zach Haptonstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investors. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, and go to our website and set up a call with our team.
My question for you now really is, how does Annie, personally define, success? as both an investor and even a mentor to many, that you've mentored over the years?
Over the years, as I've pushed the edges of who I am, what I'm capable of, what I want in this lifetime, I've had the opportunity to do some really intensive work on myself and discover edges within myself that I didn't know existed. And I used to define success as being a household name or having impact on as many people as possible, getting as many people to invest as possible, or reaching a certain number in our income or the portfolio that we manage. And I realize now that all of that is external. And while that's all fantastic and it's been something I'm so proud of that has driven us to become better versions of ourselves, that's not the it that we're striving for. That's all the external success. What I've realized is that success comes from the inside. I know, as cliche as that sounds, it's like on a bumper sticker somewhere, but it really does. Now I really understand what that means, is that I came back from a retreat recently, and it was a very intensive retreat. But the whole week after, I felt more embodied than I ever have in my life, meaning I was fully present in my body almost the entire week. I wasn't in my mind thinking about meetings that are coming up, thinking about when am I going to pick up my kids? What am I cooking for dinner? When I was here, I was right here in my body. I was feeling the things and I was present. And that helped me to create a new definition of success. And success to me now really means being fully present. And I know it sounds simple, but in order to be fully present, you have to do enough work on yourself to release those things that are always in your mind, that are holding you back, that are putting you forward in time, thinking about, worrying about, being anxious about those things. You have to be able to clear that to always be present with the person that you're talking with, to have the greatest impact here. And it doesn't matter if this conversation becomes famous, if anybody ever listens to it, doesn't matter. But if I can have an impact and I can open my soul and be here for you during this time that we're together, that is what success means to me now. For me to be an authentic version of myself, to be the same, regardless of who I'm with or where I am, but to know who I am and to be fully present with the person I'm with, that's what success means to me now.
Yeah, that's great. And it's good that you have clarity on that. I think a lot of people, kind of make their way through life, without any clarity on what success is. And the truth is that if you don't have clarity, it's really just you're chasing after the wind in some respects. And success isn't always about how other people define your success. It's how you define it, right? And so I really appreciate you sharing, your perspectives on, being fully present and, impacting others and being an authentic version of yourself. And that's how Annie, defines success in her own life. So really appreciate that. I'd love to ask you just a little bit, about kind of the state of the economy. Obviously, everybody's crystal ball looks a little bit fuzzy now, as it always has in the past. So what are some of the trends or shifts in the real estate market that you're most excited about right now?
Oh, man. Well, that $1 billion plus portfolio that you had mentioned, well, a lot of that equity is locked up right now. And for us and our investors, same. We bought earlier, but now, the interest rates have gone up. And so it's not a good time to sell, at least not yet. But the time is coming. And the Fed has already lowered the interest rates one time. They're predicted to lower them more. Who knows what's going to happen in the election? But, there's a lot of moving pieces and parts. And so that's what I'm excited about, is that, with a lot of this work that I've done, I've realized that change doesn't always mean a bad thing. Change can bring about really great things. And so right now we're kind of at this time where a lot of our equity is locked up, and we just got to hold on as much as we can and batten down the hatches and really get creative. because as we get through this time and as the economy shifts and as more things open up, the interest rates come down, things loosen up, there's going to be more deals open, and it's going to be a better time for us to sell or recap and unlock some of that equity. And so I think we're at this really pivotal time right now. And actually, as we're talking, this is a time where, experienced, seasoned, savvy investors, they've been looking forward to this time for a long time. Those people who have been through many cycles, they're like, this is the time when everybody's still scared, when everybody's still distracted and not sure. This is the time. This is the best time. And it'll take the rest of the investors some time to, get the lay of the land, to understand the changes, and then they'll be more comfortable to invest. But I see a lot of good change up ahead for real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo the same thing. I would also say within the last couple of years, it's really not been a great time to transact, on real estate, especially if you're looking to exit, out of an opportunity. Why now would you give that next potential buyer effectively a discount, right? So I think that there are great opportunities to be had at all stages of the economic cycle, of course, but there are certainly, times that are better and worse. But again, nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know when that next black swan event is going to be, et cetera. But for me, my approach has always been dollar cost average. If that sounds familiar, that's what your financial advisor tells you to do, right? Well, you can do the same thing in real estate. So while my 2021 investments as a limited partner, may not perform as well as the acquisitions that I invested into in 2023 and 2024. But obviously, as time goes on, as long as you're aligned with the right, best in class operator, that has the ability, to navigate through, the headwinds, right, and come out on the other end without losing investor capital, right? It really gives you an opportunity, to really be a participant in real estate at all different, points in history. So appreciate that. I have a question for you about kind of that newbie investor, right? So, what are some of the most, common mistakes that you would see, new investors that have never previously invested in a real estate syndication before? What are some of those kind of maybe common mistakes that you see people making?
This is such a good one. And we see this, we have lots of newer investors come to us. And in some regards, I'm a new investor too, because I invest in different asset classes. So every time I do that, I become a new investor too. And it's I would say one of the biggest mistakes and I've fallen into this trap too, is to chase after what looks pretty. And I've done this many times, and I've been handed my hat every time. And I said, this investment looks nice. I kind of know this person who's running it. But look at all these pretty pictures and look at these pretty numbers that they've put down on paper. And I don't know too much about this asset class, but they know. And I think, they're trustworthy. I think I can trust them. And they've put these numbers down and they look really good. I mean, imagine if we could 10x our money in 2 years. That's amazing. Let's do this one. And I've fallen into that trap myself, and I've seen newer investors fall into that trap where they take what's put down on paper as gospel. They're like, this is the truth. This is what's going to actually happen. And they don't realize that those are projections. And the same deal could have different projections if two different teams got a hold of the same asset. They could create two entirely different projections from that same asset based on what they plan to do with it, their expertise, their creative ideas, their business plan. And so it's looking at the investment summary or that business plan, but doing so with a critical eye and really testing those assumptions. And this is where newer investors get a little intimidated because they're like, well, these are the experts. They're putting together the investment. Who am I to ask these questions about how did they get this number? Or how do I even know what numbers to ask questions about? And the answer is ask all the questions. If a question pops up, ask that question. don't be afraid to look dumb, because you know what's going to make you feel even more like you've been had is later down the road when you said, I had a hunch that this number was off, or I had a hunch that this wasn't right, but I did it anyway. And now I've lost some of my money, or now it's in a bad situation, or now I can't get a hold of the person. And so I would say, that's a common thing that we've seen, is that the newer investors, they're a little bit shyer sometimes to ask questions. And so I would say, just, don't worry about the perception. This is your money that you've worked so hard for, and go fight on behalf of that money. Make sure that wherever you're putting it, you really understand and you have a good relationship with the team that's running that investment.
Yeah, absolutely, Annie. And I would definitely, echo that. Oftentimes I see people chasing after the glossiest pitch deck or the deal that has the highest IRR or equity multiple. But what savvy investors understand is those projections and the pro forma literally changes the day of acquisition, and it will change all the way through the entire life cycle of that investment. So it obviously comes down to, as cliche as as I say this, it really comes down to who that jockey is riding the horse, or that, pilot flying the plane. So really appreciate your perspective there. I've got kind of just a couple more last minute questions for you, Annie. One big one that I want to ask you. So this is maybe the curveball question. Okay.
Okay. I'm ready.
Yeah. And that is, what legacy does Annie Dickerson look to leave and hope to leave for future investors and entrepreneurs in the industry?
Ooh. I think it's changed a lot over the years. I think at the beginning, when we started this business, it was about, I want to help X number of people create X amount of wealth and quit their jobs and create this passive income for their families. And while that's still important, I've realized in our time working with all these investors, money is only one small piece of the overall pie. And so while a lot of people come to us for their money issues, they're feeling guilty that they're not investing, or they invested and they lost some money. There's all kinds of money related issues that they come to us with, right? And so we say, yeah, come on in. Let's see how we can help you. And then we help them to invest, or to get clarity on their investing goals. And 9 times out of 10, that doesn't solve their problem, because it wasn't really a money problem. Money is the symptom. And so now what we're expanding to is, yes, we can help you invest, and we can help you to understand real estate and how it fits into your portfolio. We can help you diversify. And if you want to stick around, we can also show you how this can bleed out into other areas of your life, and how maybe this money symptom was as a result of this stress that you had in your job. Or maybe it started with this relationship with your mom, or maybe it's your body, your aches and pains, and that's keeping you back from stepping outside of your comfort zone. It's all these other things. And that's the life aspect, where money is a symptom, but it's showing you, it's a mirror into these other aspects of your life. And so as far as legacy, I don't want to be known as a real estate company. I think we've done great things in real estate, but I think what we can really do together is so much greater than real estate. And what I would love to do is, through what we do, is help people really come alive and live their best life by design, whatever that means for them, and to have real estate be a vehicle, a piece of the puzzle in helping them to get there.
Yeah, so powerful, Annie. Living a life by design, and the amazing legacy and impact that you'll have on others, I know will be felt, into the future, including me. So thank you for that. What would be, just kind of in closing, what would be maybe 1 or 2 different ways that our listening audience can learn more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best place to go is our website, goodegginvestments.com. And we have a lot of resources on there. You know, I mentioned I started out as a teacher, so I'm very passionate about educating and just sharing the message of what this is all about. So there's a ton of resources there. And recently so we have a podcast as well. It's called The Life and Money Show. And probably the first 200 episodes were about the money side of things and very financially focused, very investing focused. And what I'm excited about is that the last 10 to 20 episodes have been more about the life side of things, these things that I'm speaking about here. As I'm venturing out further into those realms, I'm bringing them to our listener audience as well. So I invite you to listen if that calls out to you.
Yeah, love that. And we'll definitely put that in the show notes for today's episode. Annie, this has been wonderful. Thank you for joining us today.
This has been such a delight. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Absolutely. And Freedom Point listeners, thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.